All right, welcome to this group conversation for Meltano for March. We have got me in the room today, as well as Taylor and AJ, who joined the team over the last 2 weeks. And to kick things off, I have put 2 questions on the questions doc. To start with, Taylor, what brought you to Meltano?
Some would say that I've always been with Meltano. So I've been at GitLab for 3 years at this point, over 3 years at this point. And when I joined, Meltano was in its very early days. It was called the BizOps project, and the data team and the Meltano team worked very closely. So I've been able to witness and be a part of kind of the Meltano journey since its inception and through its kind of multiple pivots. But what really brought me to it, this year was originally the pivot that DAWA took last year to focus on open source extraction and loading. This is something that I strongly believed in and did advocate for way back in 2018. And now it's just kind of a perfect timing and confluence. That was showing great growth in the open source Singer community around building taps and targets and having Meltano be a fantastic way to run taps and targets. And everything just kind of aligned with the funding from GitLab and that just the opportunity for me to move over. So I'm super excited to jump over to bring the data perspective, because I helped build the data team here at GitLab, to bring that perspective and kind of the open source connections as well to the team. And I'm super excited about like what we're trying to build and the direction that we're heading. So and it's kind of the best of both worlds for me. I get to, we're within GitLab. We get to still help out the data team where necessary, but also get to help build this awesome open source product. So that's my story in a nutshell.
Thanks. Yeah, obviously we're super happy to have Taylor on board. The community has been really happy as well. I think the post where you announced you're joining in the Slack community got close to 40 emoji reactions, which is much more than our regular releases get. But you're not the only one who just joined. AJ, are you attending? Would you like
I'm
to?
Here. Yeah.
Perfect. So what brought you to Meltano?
Yeah. So hello, everyone. I'm AJ. I just joined this week. Excited to be part of the team. And what brought me, I was actually at Slalom, a consulting firm, and I was actually contributing at Slalom to Meltano as part of our usable IP initiative and building out tools that our consultants could deploy for clients. And I was struck by just how much momentum there was in the community, not just through Meltano, but certainly Meltano is kind of at the middle of all of it with Singer and DBT and other great platforms coming up. So what I saw as an opportunity was to bring all of those things together in a pattern that we could broadly bring to companies large and small. I've had the privilege of deploying for very large companies like Amazon and also very small companies like universities and smaller groups. And not everybody can afford to hire data engineers. And also within the data communities, everyone's trained on legacy tools that just aren't they aren't good. This is just a better way of working, and in the long run it's easier and faster for everybody. I'm just really in love with what Meltano can deliver and the broad vision that we have. So that's a little bit about what brought me.
Awesome. Yeah, and one of the things that got you really actively involved with the Meltano and Singer community over the last few months is this effort that you started to build a Singer SDK based on a discussion we had on an issue, and then you basically took it and ran with it. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that's coming along? Because I know that a lot of the community who are going to be watching this video are eagerly anticipating the SDK.
Yeah, I'm happy to share about that. So I'll rewind a little bit further. I was a contributor on, before I even heard of Meltano, I was a contributor on the starter project for a tap. They have like the Singer community has a template that you can theoretically copy and paste, but in there is all of this code that may or may not fully implement the spec. And it's really hard for a new person to understand, what am I doing here? So what I found after putting my time into that is that nobody was using it. Everyone was taking some existing tap from somewhere else, cloning it, and then making it their own by rehashing through. And the problem with that is that depending on where you grafted in, you may or may not have support for certain features. You might have inherited bugs. It just didn't seem like the right way for people to develop. So in conversation with DAWA, we just decided, hey, there's got to be a better way. and my drive was how do I make it so people have less code they need to write, and with less code, if you can do more, not only can you deliver faster and have less to maintain, but also in the long run, we can add features outside of your code base that you can just naturally inherit. And I think that can be very powerful for the future of the ecosystem. What does Singer 2.0 look like? And if more people are built on this paradigm, we can help accelerate the community and the advancements. So the Singer SDK, I was intending to have an entirely quiet week last week between jobs, but to my joy and dismay, people in the community just found the SDK and started building on it. And of course, we put all these disclaimers, how it's not ready and how, we're still working on it. But nevertheless, our disclaimers notwithstanding, we had 2 or 3 organic taps built, and I got confirmation from each of these individuals that they had their taps working in a matter of a day or two on an SDK that's definitely not ready. But it just shows that we have something really really powerful here, and there's a lot of interest in people being able to develop on this SDK. I guess one other thing I'll add is that there are public sources and there are also private sources. One individual said that he's developing for these backend systems, but he doesn't want to build the whole thing end to end. So he's never going to publish this tap that he made because it's not that kind of a source. But he has another one that was a public source, and he actually is doing on both sides, the very kind of private niche connector for a specific data system within your ecosystem, but also a public one that could be shared and broadly available. And I think that's just got to be part of our understanding of this product as well.
I want to jump in real quick too, and just
please
highlight how the values of GitLab are evident in this little project. We're showing transparency. We're working out in public, people are finding this stuff, and small iterations are going to help us kind of build this community as quick as possible, because we're already getting feedback even before it's officially ready. So I think the values alignment is very strong with Meltano as well.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask a question about that to you, AJ, because the fact that these people have already started using the SDK and are actually finding success with it means it might be more ready than we're giving it, we're calling it right now. So when do you think we can actually officially launch that V010, and what is still kind of blocking us from doing that? Because I know there's a couple of things.
Yeah, my biggest focus is just to reduce the amount of rework somebody does if they jump onto the tap and then we upgrade it later. So I do think we'll hammer that out in the next 2 weeks, and possibly sooner than that, but certainly by end of month. We want to get this out as quickly as we can, and if not for the onboarding process, I would have just been single-mindedly focused on that. But I am onboarding to GitLab, and we're doing some really good vision work as well that's important for me to prioritize. So, but yeah, I imagine in the next week or two we should be ready to. We should be very close, and certainly by end of month.
Awesome, thanks. All right, we've got a question from Russ. So you want to voice it?
Certainly, do man. What's the roadmap for the next 6 months? What can we start to talk to customers about that's building on your success so far? And now that you're ramping up, we expect even more.
Well, to be clear, I'm going to throw the question to Taylor, but just to answer a bit of what can we start talking to customers about. GitLab is not officially supporting or selling Meltano, so the expectation on the customer side needs to be really clear that it's just an open source project that we are interested in. No guarantees beyond that. But Taylor, what are we planning to do over the next 6 months?
Yeah, the big focus is on building the Singer community. So we kind of see that the original developers of the Singer spec, Stitch, have kind of let the community languish, and our initial focus is just building the community and making it easier to build, manage, maintain taps and targets. So the SDK is a big part of the effort, so that people have an easy way to build taps and kind of the right way, quote unquote, to the spec to get all those nice features. We're also looking at the Singer Hub, which is going to be kind of a pseudo-centralized repository and listing of all the available taps and targets. And we're talking right now about what's the validation framework going to look like for that. So folks can come to the Singer Hub, see different variants of a tap and target, and have an understanding of whether it's validated, whether it works. And we want to do that in a way that brings in the community and is kind of decentralized, and allows anybody to contribute to that. And of course, just kind of making the platform even better. One of my onboarding tasks is to spin up Meltano for Meltano. So I've got a separate Snowflake instance. We're starting to pull in, starting with GitLab data, but we've got different data sources that we want to pull in. And so in the course of doing that, I'm finding small bugs that we're going to continue to patch and maintain. But the initial focus really is on building community, driving users to this, and building that excitement for this data focused, dev first tool. Anything I missed there, Dawa?
I think you hit all the major notes, but what I wanted to add is that part of what we're building with Meltano is not just tooling to run Singer taps and targets, but also allowing you to bring in other open source data tools like dbt and things like Airflow, Superset, Jupyter Notebooks. So we are also working on building in more integrations for these various tools, with Meltano kind of taking the role of orchestrating them, not in the workflow orchestration sense where it's like this pipeline runs on the schedule, but the way that these different tools relate to each other, how they share some configuration, with Superset, for example, looking in the same Snowflake warehouse where first Meltano Singer loaded some data, those kinds of things, because we see Meltano having a lot of value as this kind of main project repository for your entire data team and strategy, where everyone can work on with all of the tools managed in a centralized place with consistent configuration and deployment, ways of doing that. And then, like Taylor said, on the side of things we're doing for Singer, the Singer SDK is a big effort. The Singer Hub is as well. To be clear, the Hub itself will be a centralized place that will catalog all of the taps and targets out there in existence that are currently kind of scattered around Git repos. But the actual maintenance of these taps and targets will remain decentralized because we see them as individual open source projects. But through the SDK and through this validation framework we're working on, there will be a standardized set of test suites, CI/CD pipelines, etc., that can run in all of these projects so that they can all have a high level of confidence with regards to the quality of the taps and the extent to which they implement the Singer specification. So for the nearer term, all of these things that basically help the Singer community and make Meltano just a really great tool for ELT for the data ops era is what we'll be focusing on. Does that answer your question, Russell?
Yes, very much so.
Awesome. Cool. Next question. Who are the major competitors in the space? What makes Meltano stand out in this space? Another question from Russ. Well, major competitors are all of the kind of legacy established data integration EL tools, Talent, Matillion, you got Fivetran, you got Stitch Data. Singer, of course, itself is not a competitor, but it is an effort on open source data integration that's been going on for a little while. And we are really building Meltano to be the commercial open source company for Singer because we think that there's a ton of tooling and community building and training material that can be written around that. On the side of open source data integration, there are some other companies playing around with that now, but Singer is by far the most established and fastest growing, most traction having open source data connector option in the space right now. And Meltano, we are very much betting on the community there.
Great, thank you.
Cool. Michael.
Hey, Dawa. Yeah, I'd just love to hear what the most surprising thing that's happened with or on Meltano over the last 6 months. You guys are moving super fast, and I'm sure there's been some interesting things happening.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I was honestly a little bit surprised by is that amazing people like Taylor and AJ got so excited about this project that they decided to, give up their great, jobs to come over to this project. At the same time, I've just been pleasantly surprised by the traction that Singer has continued to have, even though some of the kind of community support and tooling has not been quite where we think it should be. And of course, that's what we're trying to change. But we are seeing a lot of people coming out of the woodworks, working at data consulting firms that have adopted Singer over the last couple of years to as a standard for building these custom connectors for sources that are not served by the hosted EL platforms for their clients. A lot of them have started using Singer, and they have also kind of identified this need to have a better tool set for building and maintaining these steps, for running them in production. And at the same time, I've seen that a lot of companies building data products, data platforms that do something with data, often related to specific niches, have actually started using Singer for the internal data integration functionality inside those platforms. Because of course, it's great, it's a standard, you can build all of your connectors using it and then run them inside your platform, and your users don't need to know what's running inside. And these are also coming over to Meltano and starting to use it as that engine so that they're not reinventing the wheel for running those. And what else? Yeah, that's the first couple things that come to mind. Taylor and AJ, any more thoughts you want to add, since you've also been involved with the community for the last 6 months?
Yeah, I think one of the surprising things for me is how much messaging can be an effective way to grow a community or a product. Because if you think about back in May of last year, that was initial pivot. The day after, it still did very much the same things, but it's a messaging focus on, we're going to focus on extract and load, and we're going to target the Singer community. And it really gets people excited about the specific thing that the tool can do well, even if the broader vision hasn't really changed that much. But it's yeah, so I've just been impressed by the growth of this project with just one person, Dow, on it for almost an entire year. There is excitement in the community. I'm heavily involved in the DBT community, which is the data build tool, which manages transformations in the warehouse. And one of the common questions actually is people are getting spun up with it, and they're like, "Hey, can I use DBT to move my data?" And that's not something that they're focused on. So yeah, extract and load is kind of the first step to centralize your data to power an analytics function within an organization. Yeah, just the excitement around it, and the clear need, and the fact that doing this in an open source way hasn't been done before. We're still early in kind of this whole data transformation. So I'm all over the place. I'm just excited.
Hearing a little bit of the specific contextualization really seemed to help.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, it is interesting. Exactly as Taylor sketched it. So about a year ago, actually on March 13th, so 2 days from now, a year ago, I basically was left to figure out, how are we going to turn this Meltano project around? And it took me, of course, a month and a half or so of conversations with people in the space to figure out that EL side of things, Singer, was really the most promising thing we had built so far in the entire Meltano project. And it was as simple as Taylor said. I published that blog post on May 13th. The product hadn't changed at all. The actual code base didn't need to make any changes. But just by positioning it totally differently, changing up the whole website, focusing on the CLI and the EL bits more than the UI and the end-to-end aspect, immediately made it take off. The Singer community started trying it out. People started contributing, and that excitement just started building really quickly from that day. And then, of course, I started, kind of addressing more and more of the feedback we were getting, because, of course, over the past period, it had moved away a little bit from things that we would have done if we had been focusing on EL already. But I was very surprised to see, and pleasantly surprised, of course, to see the appetite for tooling like this that existed in Singer, and the fact that they were really just waiting for someone to start taking them seriously, and they were happy to engage. So the community has just been really, really awesome.
I'd like to add maybe one more thing I've observed that was it's a little surprising to me, and it's one of those things that's surprising that it's surprising, and it's what I've observed from Solemn and also just in the community is that DBT has really opened everyone's eyes that that DevOps and CI/CD are things data people should be focused on, and it's also just created this huge dichotomy of tools that can and can't support that vision. And while it solves it for DBT, it doesn't touch it as Dawa just mentioned for the extract load part. Yeah, for DBT for transformations, but yeah, for the EL part and everything else, there's not a thorough vision of how do you build a DevOps friendly data platform. And GitLab folks are probably familiar with CI/CD and all of that stuff. A lot of data people are not. It's new and scary to them. So what I see is when people try it, they never want to go back, and anyone can learn it. It's just kind of a question of how to do that. And GitLab being focused on handbook first and everything's in MR is like exactly what we're trying to do in the data community, for a community that's what's Git? Why do I need Git? And so I think just the awareness the community I see in the community that there's an appetite for this thing that's still scary but notably important. Yeah, I think it's
you make. Sorry, Michael, you can go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say this is super exciting, and I'm excited to just follow along. Everyone, you're doing great work.
Yeah, something I was going to add is that something that AJ just made me think of is that I've also been pleasantly surprised to see interest from kind of the education sector, or the sector of people brand new to data science, needing to kind of learn their first data stack. And the fact that, of course, in these programs, data science programs, they are more likely to be using open source or free tools instead of telling all of their pupils to shell out for some expensive software. So a number of kind of blog posts and article series have already been written about the combination of Meltano for EL, dbt for transformation, supersets for visualization, because it is a really easy to get started with complete data stack for that anyone can just pull and start playing around with, which didn't really exist because before Meltano and Singer there was really no open source answer to the EL question. So one particular community member, and he is called out in the group conversation slides as well, is Andrew Stewart, who is a lecturer at Johns Hopkins University in their Intro to Data Science course. And I'll have to check in with him what the status on this is, but he has been publishing this blog post series about these three tools I just mentioned. And he mentioned that he was potentially planning to make that part of the curriculum for the Intro to Data Science course at Johns Hopkins University. So I hope I'm not jinxing it by saying this now, but that would be amazing. And it is just really cool to see that, these open source tooling that allow you to kind of get used to how to do data in this DevOps way of thinking, version control, CI/CD, that really resonates. And it is becoming how people new to data are starting to learn it. They're not gonna, buy these 5 tools and learn their UIs. It's like, install these open source projects, learn Python and Git, and you're off to the races. So that has been great as well to see.
Time check, 4 minutes.
Oh, cool.
Awesome, cool. Sid, do you want to do the last question then?
Yeah, I'm looking for some free advice from the Meltano team. So Meltano is starting in data, and maybe we'll do model ops one day. GitLab is starting in code and is now thinking about adding model ops. Model ops is kind of the lifecycle management for ML and AI models. What do you think the first step should be? What's the minimum step to get better at that in GitLab?
Taylor, I know you've been keeping an eye on this conversation. What are your thoughts?
Oh my gosh. So I don't know. I honestly don't know if I'm the right person for this, because I'm such a proponent of not doing data science and like true, predictive stuff until you've got your house in order with good descriptive analytics. That said, I think having that artifact or that asset management view kind of as a first-class citizen is a big component of this. And so there's the whole kind of workflow orchestration around, and that's all code of what are you building, how are you training your model. But at the end of the day, you do have some artifact, whether it's like some pickled model or something that comes out. And so having good support for like an artifact repository, I think seems to make sense, but I would need to spend more time thinking about that space, before I could give a better answer.
Thanks, Taylor.
All right, thanks for your questions, everyone. Or AJ, just want to add? Yeah, please jump in.
Yeah, I do want to just jump in on one thing. So as I've worked with ML teams, I do hear the feedback that maybe 80% of what they're doing is data transformation. And in many cases, the transformations are done with tooling that's maybe subpar and with sometimes development practices that are not ideal, like a Jupyter notebook that just grows and grows and grows and grows and grows, but you don't know if you have reproducibility when it finally works. So it's not a solve, but I think that meeting in the middle will require us to have a common language for that transformation piece. Are ML people going to go all in on DBT? I don't know. Are the tooling on the ML side just going to get better, so data transformation isn't as much of a challenge proportionally in the ML problems? And I think where that answer comes out will help us determine how we meet in the middle. Those are my thoughts.
That's super interesting. I think what I heard earlier as well is like, hey, the first introduction of DevOps to data people is DBT. DBT is a standard. All the best in ML AI is like all the way from Kubeflow to TensorFlow to Pi something, like it has everything. So maybe DBT is our ticket in. Maybe you should focus on the transform, even though it goes under a model ops banner. Is that what you're hinting at?
I think there's a cultural question of, will ML people adopt the SQL language as their primary transformation language rather than Python? And yeah, that's, I mean, if technology wise, I'd say yes, because I'm a huge proponent of SQL and DBT and that approach. But culture wise, I don't know how strong those barriers are. And it's a broad set of users who for a very long time been using Python and pandas to do transformations.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for attending, everyone, today, including those watching from the Slack community over YouTube. And have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you next time.
Ciao for now.